I don't know if I have audio yet or where I have audio. I think I see my little speaker thing going up and down. I can't hear you yet though. I don't know if you have audio. And your video kind of stopped. All right, wow. That changed things up. So I'm going to see if this takes over. Transition. It's basically going to say no. Transition. So let's do speaker view, gallery view, enter full screen, exit full screen, mute, invite, share, end meeting. Hello, hello, test, test. There we are. Full video. Boy, oh boy. That is speaker view. Can't hear you. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Cool, thank you. 7:55. Let's see. It's only you right now, so. So going over all the settings, right? Go ahead, go through them. You got a moment. Tell us what you figure out. I like that's one of those round things in your houses. That's cool. But I tell you, I'm trying to figure out the screen thing. I don't know. Let's see, we're close. I want to get this chat up. I think I'm going to pop out chat. Throw that down there. All right, going live, going live. Yes, you can hear me. I may have had the microphone on that do not go on that not live yet. Anybody who can hear me, go ahead and join the Zoom session. The number is in the description. Fade. All right, all right. I need to get the audio out. Well, I don't have anybody to test with me right now. Let's see if I'm making sure I broadcast the audio from Zoom. All right. You guys are congratulating each other on the today's videos already. Good stuff. Hi, Josh and everyone. Hello, Craig Weaven. Are we live yet? I still see, say, 7:58 some, so I'm a little bit early. But it is good to be here. No voice. Let me transition this in. All right. So here's voice. Make sure I fade. I see Zoom people. that's like saying I see green people. I see little green men. Sound now. Yes, thank you. I back and forth. At 8 o'clock I like to try and have things actually say set. Kind of can play around in the meantime beforehand. I'm gonna turn this heater on. Hello, Michael Ratchka in the house. Can we turn it on? Hello, Michael Ratchka. Hello. Hey, Michael. As a reminder, your sound is good. I can hear you. I can hear myself. So if you would, did you just mute the YouTube feed?
Mute the YouTube. Okay.
Did you just mute the YouTube feed? Craig Beaven says, hello, Shadow Ops, Guniak. Hey, I see dead people everywhere, says Hanger 51. Uh-oh. Hanger 51, you get another episode? You die all the time on South Park, says Eric. Mike SSI. Josh, what was the answer to the missing chat in replay? So, Mike SSI asked a good question about the missing chat. It was amazing that I put that video out and there was tons of answers. Somebody else is hello, Dave. Let me move that chat off the screen. I'll move it over here so we can see everybody.
You got that deer in the headlights look.
Look at him. So, Mike SSI, the answer to that is use a new stream. That actually came from Ryan. I'm going to make a video for everybody. But yes, use a new stream when it is you are starting your live chat. And I can get into some of the technicals behind the scene, but essentially it boils down to you have to have individual streams. They give you that copy paste feature, but if you copy paste that in the back end, it's crisscrossed. It's mismatching one with another, and so they don't know which chat to play in there. So with a new stream, it's its own channel. It can do everything just fine. So welcome, Mr. Deer in the Headlights. Can you hear us?
I can.
All right, and we can hear you as well. Can
Awesome.
Everybody in the audience hear? Let me see if I have this sound turned up for everybody. I just heard a click come through, so I'm thinking that people in the audience can hear.
I can't see the YouTube chat. So.
I'm going to turn my screen up. It's way over here. And actually, I think I'm going to move this a little closer. Now watch, everybody. I'm going to drop this laptop off the table while we're live streaming. All right. Oh, I thought Eric said, welcome all and listen to Josh. And I'm like, no, listen to somebody else, not me.
Yeah, Josh is a terrible plan, man. Don't listen to that guy.
Okay, let me catch up on these chats. So yeah, Mike, I'm scrolling back down to the chats, but did you get that? Essentially, the sum of it is use a new stream. Don't use the copy paste feature that Yahoo gives you, because then that can make your Zoom go away. Josh, are you using OBS tonight or just Zoom, says Randy? I am using both. And that's a good question as well that I'm going to get the audience on. Hanger 51. Those bastards.
How do I turn my YouTube chat down?
Your YouTube feed, Mike, you should be getting audio through your Zoom. So therefore, you shouldn't need audio from YouTube. From YouTube, you can leave it running, but just press the mute on the actual, say, screen of the video. Let's see. I will essentially do the same thing. I'll go to my screen, my stream, and I'm doing this on the other computer. That's why I'm, say, looking over here. And I'll show everybody essentially what it is. Essentially, did you hear that? Essentially, that's me repeating it. All right, so real quick, as I go in to my stream, if I were you guys, and you're joining the Zoom,
There's like a lot of Inception shit happening right now, man.
Yeah.
There's like windows and windows.
Make sure you take the right pill. So this is the delay. This is what's interesting is each time you see one of these, you can tell how much the delay is. That's what that is, the share of the share. This is oversharing. So as you go in, and pay attention to the bigger screen of it, as you go in, this is what you want to mute. As you go in, if you don't mute it, that's what you get. So you should be in, say, Zoom only, and that's the Zoom, right? But if you were in the YouTube and the Zoom, you get your audio from the Zoom and not from this. So this is why your YouTube feed has to be muted. You can leave it running. That way you can see the chat as well. Guniak says he's lost. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to.
I'm lost too.
All right, let me put Zoom back up. Guniak says he's lost. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to. Essentially, Michael, close the YouTube stream. Just close YouTube. You can close your internet. You can simply run Zoom.
But I can't see the YouTube chat now.
You're right. So now, when you go to see the chat in YouTube, open that back up, except mute it. Mute the audio from the YouTube.
Well, my audio is coming from my computer on this meeting too.
Right. And it's going through Zoom. But it'll just go through Zoom, and it doesn't need to go through YouTube as well.
It mutes both of them all at once.
Yeah, not both all at once. That's like a way overshare thing.
Well, mutes both of them all at once.
When you mute, not your computer. Mute the YouTube stream itself within the window.
How can I?
When you hit play and pause within the stream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Oh my goodness.
Man, that took an act of Congress to figure that out. My brain hurts.
You are dismissed to go take a aspirin or Tylenol.
Thanks. I'm gonna need
Okay,
to.
now, Josh.
You are good, Michael.
You're good to go.
All right. And that goes for everybody else. Do you want to explain that in your words, Michael? What you just did?
Well, you hear me?
Yeah.
All I did was minimize the screen on the Zoom, and have a small screen on YouTube, and down on the bar where I just muted the mic on the bar on the chat, and I'm right through Zoom now. Is what I'm doing.
All right. Let me ask the people in the chat. And hello, Colin, Arrow Shows. Thank you for joining. Apologies for the seriousness. Are the people in the chat able to hear Michael Rochka? And if Michael, if you would say, hey,
Whoa.
Can you hear me? Or did you guys hear that?
Can you hear me now?
Mike SSI is saying yes to something.
Fireman just shit himself. I even saw him lean over.
Okay,
I'm trying to figure out. Never mind.
here it is. Dave takes it in a bum.
Bad news.
I was in the Navy, man. I can't help it.
You still got those settings on your radio, Dave?
All right. So one thing we are going to do is I'm going to play a video from Guniac, from Ray.
Oh, radio.
And it's actually a pretty cool one. I haven't actually seen it, but I've heard about it. I'm going to share it with the audience. So you guys will be, covered up just for a moment. It was nice. And it's also within this video.
You found a man.
We won't stop laughing all night long if you do that. I didn't realize that you could do that within this show now.
It's just the right time.
Oh my gosh. All right. So I was trying to be serious here.
Oh my God.
So within this, we can see, I'm trying to be serious. Within this, we can see the passion of Ray.
All right, so I'm going to give everybody here a barbecue view.
Oh man, he's going to make us
See what it
hungry
is
though
that I
too.
do here.
So yes, I will play this over here, and I'm going to say zoom through it. But this is, oh my gosh, I'm already hungry.
Hi, Kenny.
Oh, come on, man.
I know. Let me get past this part.
I don't see anything.
Let's see. This is within the YouTube.
So
Oh, okay.
I fixed it.
Nice.
So you don't want to see it right now.
What is it?
Fire.
Everything's enclosed.
Especially if you're hungry.
Camera,
Fireman,
receiver,
Mr. Ray.
transmitter.
I'll look at it.
It's bind and fly.
Nice.
Everything.
Who makes it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Cool. I don't care who makes it. I like it. It's all enclosed.
Freaking awesome.
Is that the one with the has the
So
lights
this
on the
is
back?
Ray.
It's
Cool.
freaking cool. Man.
Very cool.
Let's see. What's cool is
I like it.
he's also showing some other people in his club. So I'll show those. But somebody's got a Captain
Hey,
America
Corey.
t-shirt on.
Don't eat your sandwich.
Chicken. Hold, yes, but go quickly, okay?
I need that.
Oh, you just playing a video.
Yeah, I'm playing a video from Mr. Ray.
Man, that's a heck of a club turnout they had there.
Yeah, ain't it nice?
Where are your apples?
Yeah.
Wait,
What's that?
that big ass grill is like a
Apples.
permanent fixture at y'all's club?
My kids? Oh, raffle.
I don't think this
Raffle
is at
stuff
the
is
club.
all right here.
Or is
Yeah.
that like
all right
a
here.
Get those, man.
is that like a
So,
trailer?
um,
or
Whirl
something?
'em.
When you
This
buy
is-
food,
this is a
every
place that he
$5 you
flies
spend,
at
you get a ticket.
every once in a
And you
while.
can buy tickets more extra if you want to. $5.
$5 says Ray. What you got for $5, Ray?
$50, you get a wrench.
Is that a good or a bad thing? though?
So this does look like a permanent
Yeah.
fixture at that
He's
park.
taking care of it all.
It does.
Yep. And yeah, this
the
is
lady under
their
the tent.
their
Same-
fun fly
same
and all that.
person that you got
And the
the
thing that's
raffles
nice
from.
about it, like you guys were
Julie,
talking
yeah.
about the turnout and all that, it's a lot of this is actually due to Guniac, to Mr. Ray, because you know, as he was saying to me on the comment, let me see, is that he. Well, I'm not going to try and list all the things. He can list it in the chat all the things that he did, or I can say copy paste his message to me. But it's impressive. He was say doing the raffle and all of the other things that make an event an event. Let's see if I can copy paste it in here into the chat itself.
Dave, great video. You confused the fuck out of me. I'll tell you right now.
All right, so I'll read it out loud. I did it all, hooked up sound system, played music, then had a raffle later on in the day. I had some volunteers, but I did pretty much all of it with help from my wife and read more, kids too. So yeah, it's nice that the wife was involved along with all of the other people that were helping out as needed, you know what I mean? And I was telling them that I as well, for my club, ran the grill on the second day. We had a 2-day event because it was the AMA District 2 Fun Fly. We hosted it to represent District 2. So next year I'll expect Mr. Dave's RC to come out to the AMA Fun Fly because he's so much into that versus his field that he flies at. All right, let me get this chat back up because this is important. Good stuff. Somebody said, awesome, Rondo. That would be Eric. Guniac is laughing at something. I don't know, maybe himself.
She's making fun of you and you don't see it.
Well, why did you even tell me? I'm not even supposed to know about it. We made Fireman hungry.
Yeah, I went and got some chow.
Good stuff. Smart man. So one thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, and I'm not going to try and direct the chat, but wherever it goes, is I wanted to start talking more about, say, beginner jet. I'm still a beginner myself, I would say, and part of this that spurs this on is a comment from Wayne Lee 630. So he's saying to Dave in his video for the Viper, there you go. At least he's not showing us the submarine anymore. He was saying to Dave, RC Air Marshal, what, and he put the beginner jet in quotes, and it was funny because I was replying at the same time RC Air Marshal was. And when we say beginner jet, it's interesting. It's almost like, say, there's a starter jet and then there's a beginner jet. And for him, I think beginner was like legit. Whereas starter jet is more of something to just get you into EDFs. And that's part of the point, is that EDFs are a different type of power than a prop plane. So that's one of the reasons why EDF jets, or say EDF planes or EDF wings or sailplanes, you could put EDF on anything or turbine on anything,
Dave,
is different than a prop plane. Are you making arm fart noises, or what are you doing, Michael?
You get that look in his eyes again.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing, man. His hand is below the camera, so
So are yours. That's what I'm worried about.
We got to do a hand check now.
Only one hand.
Okay, so Pterodactyl is saying he's getting buffering. I'm going to try one thing real quick. I see what you're saying, Shadow Ops, but this should just be a screen capture, so it shouldn't be any more with this. It should just be essentially one stream of audio video from OBS. But one thing I can try, yes, after Pterodactyl, you try to refresh the screen. Let me know, because I can lower the baud rate. Yeah, I don't want to get technical. I don't even know what it is myself. But baud rate is something you can set within OBS so that people on the other end don't get buffering. But I get on my end that everything is good, well, excellent connection with YouTube. So it may be your end, so let me know if it doesn't fix it with a screen refresh. And I will adjust that. All right, so Dave Marshall, you were answering this question for him, and we were actually answering it at the same time. But what are your thoughts on the beginner EDF jet and the stages and how it is a person gets to, not comfortable, because we're never comfortable. We should never be comfortable, but let's just use that word, comfortable with flying EDF jets.
Yeah, and when you say beginner, because I get the disparity between the two terms, right? So when you say like beginner EDF and what was the other one you used, like starter EDF?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so for a person that's got a lot of experience flying warbirds or something like that, that's just never flown an EDF, you know, their entry point may be a different spot than somebody who's got very little experience, you know, that may have started with a trainer. Like their whole goal from the start of their RC
two great points,
life or whatever, like their goal was, I want to fly EDFs, you know, so they are truly a beginner. So they start with an apprentice or something like that. And, you know, like they can progress into something like that. So, you know, I'd say for someone in that category whose goal was to get into EDFs from the beginning, you know, I would still say an EDF needs to be like their third or fourth airplane. You know, you don't need to just jump right in, because an EDF, no matter how you slice it, you know, whether it's beginner friendly or not, is still a much higher performance airplane and takes a bit more finesse than a prop plane, you know, because a prop plane, you get in trouble. They've got so much on-demand torque, you know, that as soon as you punch that throttle, you can get yourself out of a bad situation. And that's why we say you have to be a few seconds ahead of an EDF, because it takes a while to spin up that turbine.
Can I stop you on that point?
Yeah, of course.
I was going to stop you because you say finesse, but you also then hit on that you have to be ahead of it, because that's what it is that I feel is the difference in a lot of ways, along with what you're saying, is the reaction time. You have so much less reaction time with a jet. And that's why it is you say have to be ahead of it, because you essentially can't react. Hangar 51 says, unless you're Dave's RC. So we'll see what it is he means by that. But yes, if you would keep going up upon your other point of the spool time of the EDF.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, you have to be ahead of the jet, and that's what people mean. Not only does the jet move faster through the air, and I think that's where that differentiation between a high performance EDF and a beginner friendly EDF, that's where that distinction is made, is in the speed envelope of the airplane. You know, so a beginner friendly EDF, something like the Aeros RC Marlin, something like the Freewing L39, the Avanti S, the 64 millimeter birds, you know, especially like the E-Flight birds, the F-15 and F-16 64 millimeters, the E-Flight Viper, you know, those are all great picks as first EDFs, because of their speed envelopes. Not so much the 64 millimeter F-16. That thing is kind of a wild bird. you can definitely go and do some crazy corkscrews. That thing will turn, like no tomorrow. But the F-15, has a much wider, speed envelope, so you can slow it down. If you're not comfortable with that speed, you can get nice and slow, especially when you start talking flaps. You can bring the Avanti and the Viper to a crawl.
Sure
like
thing,
barely
John
moving.
Stewart. Sure thing, John
Yeah,
Stewart.
yeah, man. I like it. That's the best one I've heard yet.
That's
people
better
are like,
than Jeff Goldblum.
Dave looks like Jeff Goldblum. Like, fuck
He
you,
has
I
a
don't
man
look like the
without
fucking
faces.
fly.
I think he was legitimately offended at that one.
Goldblum.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to grow my hair real long and get a big beard, and people will be like, Dave looks like Santa, and I'll take that.
Did you get my joke that I said on the video to get people to your show Monday night about I think you should have waited till after Christmas for your presentation, for your surprise of you're all shaved?
Oh.
Yeah,
Hey, Josh. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Fireman.
I was just going to say, to add what Dave was saying, is it's an individual thing in some respects too, because you take some of those real fast prop planes, like the racers, like the Voodoo or the Moray, or I forget that EFX racer from Hobby King. Those things are screamers, and so just like in real aviation, where that's why people start in trainers in real aviation, is because they're slower, and so they need reaction time. They have to think ahead of the airplane, et cetera. And so RC is really not any different. So
Good point.
Someone who flies one of those fast prop planes, the screamers, the ones that go 120 miles an hour, can easily transition straight into a non-beginner jet like a Marlin. They don't have to start there. They can start with something like a Stinger 90 or whatever. But then like Dave talked about, that turbine lag,
You're number
the real
one.
thing,
It's for Photon.
Yeah.
Photon, yeah.
So is that SSI? Captain Photon, top left is Michael Rochka. He is my neighbor within New York. He is Buffalo. I am Syracuse, New York. So one of the things that we're going to watch tonight too, guys, it may not be too terribly interesting for you, but us, I'm watching my weather. When I started this show, the temperature was 16 degrees Fahrenheit. Since then, it's dropped to 14. It's supposed to drop all the way down to 0 over the night. So I just want to see what it changes over this show.
Here too.
Dude, I was mad as hell today because it was 40.
I
You should
wish.
be smart.
So Randy says, I bought the UMX MiG-15 first. It's a screamer, 13,500 kV. It hurts my ears. Angry Hornet. So I want to go also back to Fireman's point, is that let's think about, say, the full-scale pilots. I don't say, I try not to differentiate us as, say, fake. I'd say more, say, scale. So that's why I'm careful with myself. I say they're full scale. We are model scale or just scale. They also use the virtual simulator at the same time. And a lot of times in these chats, we get asked, what is the best first plane? What's the best jet? Well, it's a virtual jet. It's a virtual plane. It's a simulator. It'll save you money. It's something that you should buy. And I'll say that before I bought the Havoc, and why I bought the Havoc is Real Flight 9, which is the latest simulator. It came out with Havoc on it. I went into the RC shop, which I should not have done at all for any reason, but I was there. And I'm looking through and I see Havoc. All right, I'm going to fly this plane. I've heard good things about it. I start flying it, and I'm starting to fly like Pilot Ryan. Not as good, but I'm starting to fly to where I'm really enjoying all the things that it can do. And I'm saying to myself, wow, I can handle this plane. So I mentioned it to the owner. Hey, that's a great jet you got on the Havoc. That's awesome. You got the RF9. And he winds up wisely pointing to it way up high on the shelf that I didn't see. And he offers me a deal on it that I hook, line, and sinker took the next day, after I got permission from the boss. But, it was because I could fly that plane on the simulator that I even bought it. I haven't yet unboxed it or anything, and I'm thinking about doing that here soon. But it was only...
Do it now!
Do it. Uh-oh.
That'd be awesome.
Severe storm alert. Apologize, peoples. But yeah, we got some conditions coming through here. You may be getting that soon there, Michael, on your phone.
I already went by us already.
Oh, yeah? Okay, so I'm getting the tail end. So does that make sense that, yes, to Fireman's point, let's follow the full-scale pilots. And they don't start off with a jet, which is like, say, Dave Marshall is, their career trajectory may be to fly and to land on a carrier, an F-18 or something, but they're not starting off with that.
No, that's like 2 years of progression, of flying every day for 2 years. Navy flight school takes a long time before you ever even think about landing on a carrier.
We're talking about flying, but how would you like to fight a fire in this kind of weather, fireman?
Sorry?
How do you fight a fire in this kind of weather when it's 6 degrees outside?
What? Same as we do when it's 100. What do you mean?
Doesn't the water freeze in the hoses?
We put the wet stuff on the hot stuff.
Yeah.
It becomes a big ice rink out there. And now in today's environment, we're using a lot more compressed foam.
Okay.
So, but there's still departments nationwide and even up in Canada, water is the primary source to put it out. But it's a big ice rink and you slip and bust your butt.
Yeah.
It adds for a level of humor on the scene. So see who's going to wipe out.
So tell us your best cold weather firefighting story, fireman.
Oh, shoot. We had one. It's been a while. I think it's probably been maybe 12 years. Oh, you know when it was? It was 2002 because it was right after 9/11. It was January 2002. We have massive ice storms in the Midwest that just shut down the whole Midwest. And we caught a fire in a neighboring city that we had to go down and run mutual aid to. And just were spraying so much water that the mist came across all the trucks and everything. And so all the doors, the chief's vehicle was all froze solid. He didn't get in. That was the funniest because he's out there in his white shirt and no coat. But he'll probably watch this someday and beat my ass. But
so that's probably part more to your question, Michael Rochka, is that if you have a huge stream of water, it's going to take more time for it to freeze, but the lighter mist is going to freeze a little quicker.
Oh yeah, the mist kills you, and we just had the hugest, just to see all the trucks and all the cars surrounding that fire just completely encased in ice. It was, that real snowy ice. Yeah, that was one of the best ones, but 2 or 3 guys bit it big time on there, and at least a couple we got on film to where they slipped and fell on their ass. So that's just comic relief for us.
Did you say you got it on film?
I think they do. Yeah, I think we had it in back then in our Chiefs cars. We had really huge dash cams. I mean, they were bigger than crap back in 02. I don't know, there's probably people on here that weren't even alive then. But back then they had real big cameras, and so they would try to nose into a scene so that they could film everything or the most pertinent parts.
Oh, right.
So yeah, we had a couple guys that are definitely memorialized in video that we show from time to time at the annual party. So
Guniak actually says that he does, where he is, he's somewhere in California, does get cold in December. One thing I actually had a question for Guniak. We had someone in the chat earlier talking about, say, beginner planes, even, say, let alone jets, but it was John Jones, and he said he was in Riverside, California. I don't know California, but Guniak, are you anywhere near Riverside by chance? Because the reason I ask is, there's a lot of people that they want to get to planes and jets. And we have to know to be able to answer that. As Pilot Ryan says, he's going to start asking questions, what you've flown beforehand. As Dave Marshall was saying, if we know that you've flown a lot of warbirds, not just say a high wing trainer or a pusher prop, that's a little friendlier, then we're a little more apt to say, yes, you can say step up more. But one of the other big things is to get to an airfield with AMA coaches. And as a matter of fact, Dave Marshall is a coach. So he'll help you put your plane into the ground.
Fast.
And then set you up to buy a new E-flite or a new Horizon Hobby product.
And Ray says he's near San Francisco. So I'm not sure whether that is, say, near Riverside or not.
No, not even close. Riverside's down by LA.
Okay, gotcha. So still though, that's the nice thing about this chat and the streams and the Zoom is that we can get people together answering the questions right away, as if the closest thing to a fly-in that we're going to get is this Zoom. So this is how we can answer questions, along with very, very nice, along with giving you advice on where you can get the rest of your questions answered. What Fireman just showed was the UMX Timber. It's definitely nice.
I was actually on a Zoom chat, and Diamond Dave down there talked me into buying it. I did an impulse buy on it and then had to beg for forgiveness the next day from my wife.
Oh, whatever, man. $99. That was easy to get forgiven.
So Deuces Wild is appreciatively backing me up on the Warbird. He's saying, if you could fly a 109 or an F-104, you're on top of the game. What is the 109? I was thinking
the F-109 is a prop plane. That's
the Messerschmitt, but the F-104 is the Widowmaker.
That's a freaking,
the BF-109 versus
that's a missile with little bumblebee wings, man.
Okay. I know the F-104 is the Widowmaker. The
Starfighter.
Yeah,
right?
that's the one where I saw Ray land that thing. And that's another point about those jets, is that they have very small wings, so they have to go fast. And some of these planes where, like the Starfighter, you try and get that high alpha for that nice land, or any time in that plane, and it goes too far under speed, you're going to stall it. But he's one of the only people I've just really seen, one of the best. And even if Ava were here right now, she would still give him a nice rating on that landing. But that's the best Starfighter landing I've seen was from him.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that earlier, kind of that differentiation between an EDF that is beginner friendly and an EDF that is not. So like an F-104, not a beginner EDF. An F-5, not a beginner EDF. Even like an F-18, really tiny wings, big, long airframe. The F-18, I think, is 1,500 millimeters long, 1,000 millimeter wingspan. Those things need speed to stay in the air, and you got to land them fast. You got to get that high alpha as you're bringing it into land to bleed the speed down. So
you kind of brushed off over that pretty quickly, but that's an important part that a lot of people, even people that do fly jets, don't understand or don't want to, or just haven't done the high alpha to scrub off the speed. And when I say scrub off, I mean to cause more friction, more turbulence in the air. Now, if you're like this, you're say very aerodynamic. But if you're like this, you can tell that there's going to be swirlies behind, and that's why you want to say do that high alpha. So Can you again go through that a little slower to talk people through what that?
The bigger the wings, the easier it is to do that, though.
Say again.
The bigger the wings, the easier it is to do that.
Right. The more surface you're going to have to hit.
The surface area you have, the easier it is to bleed out the speed.
The what, Michael?
So
The more surface winging area you have, the easier it is to bleed out the speed.
Right. So Dave, can you walk us through that? Because definitely talk to us about like what Michael's saying about that surface area basically facing the wind and landing and
so the surface area is actually going to make it more difficult to go into a high alpha situation. You know, because you're going to have, you know, with more surface area comes lighter wing loading. And with lighter wing loading, if you go into high alpha, you're just going to want to fly up. You know, and with the other jets like the F5, the F104, even the F-18 to some degree, you know, the long plane, short itty bitty wings, very fast jets. You know, as you start getting into that high alpha situation, you're riding on the ragged edge of having control of the plane and it just completely falling out of the sky. So, and that's where that skill level comes in, because you know, that's also where that finessing the throttle, you got to have awesome throttle management to be able to maintain high alpha, and you have to be able to see when something bad is happening, catch it to get yourself back into level flight, because you're so slow at that point. Like I said, you're right on that ragged edge of a stall. So if you slow down too much, you're just going to fall out of the sky. If you're going too fast, you're going to be climbing, you know, so you're controlling the angle of the tack and the glide slope, you know, where your plane has a nose up attitude, a nose up angle of attack, but you're still in a negative glide slope, you know, so it's an odd attitude to have your airplane in if you're not used to flying that way.
So I'm going to show the,
you got a little bitty model or something?
Yeah, essentially, right? So I'm going to show the angle attack, what he's saying by that. And that is, you have your air coming from this direction. This right here would essentially be 0 degrees. Now, even if, no matter what the case, it's the air and the angle off of essentially 0. So the more you angle, that is your angle of attack. And what he's saying is, the higher the wing load, the higher the wing area, the more you're going to scrub off and the more turbulence you're going to have. And you're going to get to that point that you're so slow that you're going to stall that plane. But the other thing is that it is okay to stall a plane for basically 2 reasons. You're trying to, well, it's one reason, and there's many scenarios. You're trying to for practice, or you're landing. So when you land and you're there, you're scrubbing off that speed at the position where it is okay to stall, and then your wheels essentially drop. Now you may drop and you may hit one wheel before the other, but essentially it's just going to settle down, and you're basically right there.
That's your glide path too.
Yeah, so the glide path and getting yourself out of it is you're changing your potential energy into, say, kinetic by going down and using gravity, except you're still, say, going forward because you're still flying. It's that stall when you're not flying. So the other thing that he said was your throttle management. And if it is that your angle of attack is too much and your speed is too slow, you need to get yourself back to the easier, more stable, level flight with the wind so that your wings are actually able to provide lift. Now, I don't want to confuse anybody, but you get more lift with high alpha, but you also get more turbulence. And you're not necessarily going to be able to power out of that all the time because of what we're saying with the spool time that it takes. And as Dave was saying, is it takes a long time to progress to that point. That was one of the things that differentiates the prop versus the EDF, is that if you're coming in with a prop plane and you hit the throttle, you're going to get almost instant torque and power to be able to, say, pull out of anything. And that's why the UMX Timber, or even the Timber, I think is a great beginner plane.
Hop in, Ryan.
Right, and Josh, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will, say that with a prop plane, especially once you get out of like your high wing trainer, so you're talking like low wing, sport craft, low wing warbirds, you still kind of have to be careful with just punching it. I always like to ease into the throttle, because
let off the elevator.
Unless you've got two, if you're running a twin, it doesn't affect it so much, especially if they have opposing propellers, but when you've got, the left or right hand turn propeller, it's going to torque that plane to the left.
Right.
And make it do wacky things.
Like Mikey's saying, is you need to stay ahead, Mikey B. And then Pilot Ryan was saying, say, to compensate. And I'm not exactly sure what he was saying to compensate, but it may be that you're compensating with power your friction that you're causing. And the thing about it is that you're losing your lift because you're losing your speed because you're causing the friction, but you have that power and even extra power because that's actually what's keeping your plane vertical. So part of your direction of your jet nozzle is upward. That's actually how you are directing your height. And one of the other things that Deuces Wild said in the chat was, to always practice. And I wish somebody would have told me this, because, I've smashed planes in, but even EDFs, because I got overconfident because I wasn't high enough. And even if it is, you do a stall and you recover, you may find yourself, by the time you do recover, facing a metal cargo container with a jet that you're at full throttle with, thinking I'm good, and you face that cargo container. Well, you guys know the jet loses and it splinters. It actually, you can make
every time.
You can make it look like a balsa plane. It explodes. But that is an important point that Deuces was saying, is when you do get that jet up, and a lot of planes at a high altitude to flirt with that stall up there, so it recovers, and then you can fly your plane again in a coordinated fashion. So that way, once you get to the ground, you can know what it's going to do and how it's going to react, so that you can say, all right, I can essentially safely let my plane down, get that high alpha, and if it is that it stalls, it's going to be close to the ground, and I'm going to have one wheel touch, and then the other wheel will touch, and say roll in. But
that's exactly right. But some planes just don't do that high alpha. When you get those stub your wings and those faster jets, they don't. So, like what Pilot Ryan said in his video, and it's just like the real planes. The real planes set up a glide slope, and they set up a 3-degree down angle into the of what they do, and they set it up for, say, a 500 feet drop.
That's your ILS glide slope is 3 degrees.
I agree. Yes, I know. But what I'm saying is that they get the airplane set up in a configuration, landing flaps, etc. And I'm just talking to real planes, but because we can't gauge
angle of attack
so much on ours, but they have a certain angle of attack, and what they're doing is they keep that angle of attack steady all the way down to the runway, and they're controlling their feet per minute drop. They're controlling their descent with the throttle only. So that's what Ryan says, is kind of tweak your planes, and he moves his batteries, and things like that. And he makes sure that the center of gravity is where he likes it, so that when he gets his landing configuration coming in, it kind of presents the same.
Right.
For generally for different types. And he's just he leaves that alone. He doesn't touch elevator. He's not messing with any of that coming in. He's just using throttle alone to control.
And that's why
Pilot
Ryan is saying throttle. and
Yeah.
then Deuce's
Yeah.
Wild is saying manage the descent. So you take those together, it is
Correct.
no longer your elevator, because
Right.
your elevator, and as we always say, the elevator doesn't give you altitude. It controls the pitch of your plane.
Right.
So it's
Right.
pitch control. If it is you were to all of a sudden full throttle, then maybe if you have that much power, you'll go. But you actually are trying to just keep it like this to keep that angle of attack. And that's really like the, I'm not going to say it, I'm going to try and keep my channel clean, but you know, that's the good stuff of the landing is when you are able to keep that angle of attack and you're comfortable with that plane, you've already tested it, you know it's not going to stall, you really just with a throttle can lower, and even if you want to raise your plane, because let's say in one of the areas that I fly, you're over grass and you want to make it to the asphalt, you can stay on the throttle and maintain, and then as you lower that throttle, then at the right spot, that's when say you can land it.
Then it quits flying and you land basically. Yeah.
And Tim Toutant is also saying the flare. So even if it is you have that throttle management down, you still want to, as Dave Marshall was saying, scrub that speed. So if you're in that safe spot where you're going to land and you know your wheels are, as you can say, see my hand right here, let's just pretend that's the wheel hitting the ground, you can max out your elevator. Now that you may not have the authority on your elevator, but every bit that you max out your elevator itself, it's also doing angle of attack. If you think about it, you know, so the more you do that, the more friction that you're going to cause, more drag, then that you're going to cause, and you're going to scrub even more speed. Even if your plane doesn't say come up more angle of attack, you're still scrubbing speed by having your elevator do that. And you are, say, going to land nicer. Now, I'm curious what everybody else also thinks about the elevator once your wheels, Guniak says flare's overrated. You'll have to explain that one later, Guniak, or join the chat on Zoom. Just so you guys know, the number for the Zoom, you can get in on this if you download the Zoom app on your phone or on your computer. And even luckily Pilot Robert was able to get in on the Zoom last Friday night, which was awesome. He was able to do it basically while we were chatting along with some of these fellows that were able to get in right away. So what I was saying about, I believe what I was saying about that flare is once you land, and what I was asking about is the elevator, what everybody's opinion is on that. Me personally, I feel that unless you know all of your speed is scrubbed off and there's no way that your plane would possibly have enough airspeed to lift off again, I let go of my elevator completely. What do you guys, what are your thoughts on the elevator once your wheels have touched down?
Gosh, when you fly that plane for the last 3-4 minutes, you've got a feel for it. And you've got a feel for what's going to make it let it land better, no matter what you do as far as throttle or elevator or whatever. But, you know, a lot of your glide path, how high you come in, your angle, and you've got a feel for that plane, and you got to feather it in. It's what you got to do.
Shadow Ops has got to take off. See you later, Eric.
And for I have never flown a turbine, you know, a turbine RC jet, so I have no idea, you know, what it's like to have wheel brakes. But I'll tell you what I do with my elevator when I land, depending on whether it's a tail dragger or a tricycle gear.
Right.
If it's a tail dragger, once the plane is on the ground and I'm satisfied that I have made the transition from flight to ground handling, I put full up elevator on it to keep the tail down, and actually have ground control with the tail wheel. For jets and tricycle landing gear, I will put full up elevator on it and try to use the elevator to create some drag to slow it down, so I don't go shooting off the end of the runway.
And
If you're landing in grass, it doesn't matter.
And that is true. But if somebody lands hot, they're going to lift off again.
Yeah, and
so it's a lot of
Look at
it's
the tail
about
dragger.
doing what you're, because you watch these things, you watch a lot of these videos. Sometimes the guys land so hot, so fast that if they had the elevator or increased elevator, they'll take off again, and then they get that crow hopping or all that. So yours, with your method, Dave, obviously you've already stalled the wing.
Right.
Right. And you've reduced power to where the wing is stalled and it sits down. You can put in full elevator at that point. Yeah. So a lot of it is, again, unfortunately, purposes, it depends and experience.
So Mikey,
and that's where a good experienced person at the field can help you to learn that.
So Mikey B is saying, I was always taught for landing that throttle is altitude. And that is true, because the throttle and the elevator do change.
Right.
Rudder for direction, which is a very good point, because if you're using the ailerons and then you have to then counter, it's way too difficult on final. You want to make it simple. And then he's saying elevator to maintain the glide slope. The other thing about the elevator is the elevator maintains your speed. And so therefore, and then your ailerons keep your wings level on final. And that's getting into, say, the cross control.
Elevator speed and throttle is your descent.
Yeah, so
the rate of descent.
It's all those points, except elevator controls your throttle. It doesn't control your altitude.
Right. So the elevator is going to control your angle of attack, not your angle of descent. Right. So your
pitch. Yep.
Your descent angle, right? So if you're coming down real sharp, it means you don't have enough throttle. If you're coming in too flat, it means you have too much throttle. Your descent angle is controlled with your airspeed, right? So if your angle of attack is too shallow, you want to have a little less airspeed, and drop your angle of attack. If your descent angle is too sharp, increase your airspeed.
Right.
So, that angle of descent or descent rate is controlled by your throttle, by your airspeed.
So I'm going to read something that Deuces Wild put in here, and I'm not sure that I comprehend it right away, but Deuces Wild is saying, I will say that I've seen a lot of landings from Deuces Wild or Mike. I've hardly seen him bounce, if ever at all. I can't say I recall one. I just don't want to say that he hasn't. But he lands a lot of jets. And he also he has a lot of room and he uses it wisely. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't try to over control. That's one of the things I like about seeing his landings. But he's also got, say, a good spot. He's saying
we got a mystery guest. Someone's jumping in.
Use minimal elevator to maintain positive angle of attack. A well-balanced CG allows you to not have to attempt a timed flare. Oh, the timed flare. That's killer. You can't do it. And that goes to what I was saying about, keep your landings simple. You don't want to have to catch it at last moment and try and do that. George Watches is saying the chat just like flew by me there. I don't know. Okay. On my gas giants, I sometimes don't even touch the elevator to land or ailerons. Throttle and rudder are the key to landing. There is a video out there for the elevator, and it's amazing that the guy says, what's the downwind dog leg? I'm not sure the name, but it's not the final. He's saying essentially the whole time you're setting yourself up for the runway, you are on the rudder, not the ailerons at all. The ailerons are only to keep your plane level. They're not to say turn and bank. It's not a yank and bank. You should be past
talking
that.
the turn that you make before you turn final.
Right.
That's
downwind.
It's your base leg.
It's
base leg. Okay.
Yeah.
And Tim Tutotten saying the throttle is the glide slope, which is
Correct.
The throttle is your height.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, that's always the case, no matter what phase of flight you're in. You know, even in cruise, you control lift with throttle. You know, and if you think about what I'm saying here, when we trim an airplane, whether it's a full scale airplane or a model, we're trimming for a certain speed, right? So say we want to cruise at say 100 knots of indicated airspeed, right? So we're trimmed at 100 knots for straight and level flight. If we increase the throttle, we're going to lift up because we're now outside of our trim window unless we retrim for the higher speed. You know, if we lower the speed, we're going to drop. Technically speaking, you should always be using throttle to manage your altitude. You don't want to, use pitch. It's only in situations where you have like a fighter jet. I mean, and that's for like true scale, like general aviation flight. Like fighters. And aerobatic airplanes. Which is what most of us fly, even with a big airliner. We don't fly that thing scale. Look at freaking Bobby Committa. I mean, he's turning that bitch upside down. So, like we don't fly
That's
model
awesome.
scale. But if you did, once you trim your airplane, and try it out, get your plane trimmed to a certain speed, you cut the throttle, it's going to start losing altitude. You increase the throttle. I usually trim my planes for about half to 60% throttle, and I use that throttle to manage my altitude. I don't typically fly at 100% throttle all the time, unless I'm just trying to test my batteries out, and I'm hot dogging it for the whole 3 minutes. But that's where throttle management and stuff like that comes in, and that's how Kenny, is able to fly for 9-10 minutes on a battery. You trim your plane for the speed that you want to fly.
Right, for sure. Another good point that George Watts is saying is experience is the key. Now, at first, when I read that, I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because you can't fly unless you can't get experience unless you fly. You can't fly without experience. But it does, because after that, he says everything slows down with experience. And that is, say, the difference between jets and why what Dave Marshall is saying is so important about that scrubbing off that speed is because with experience, you can fly jets slower. You can also land in a tighter spot. It's just that you have to, with experience and knowledge and the community, know how to slow it down, know what jet will high alpha versus, like, say, I asked even a full scale pilot that flies the F-16 about the high alpha. And what he said was the F-18, because of the way the body's shaped and the root edge or something, I don't know, somebody can put it in the chat about what it is that's along the F-18, that helps it do the high alpha. And somebody actually even tested that F-18 up to, like, say 78 degrees under the most extreme circumstances, whereas like the F-16 will only do like, say, 20 degrees or less. And then you'll get to that point where you'll break and you'll go past the high alpha.
Right. Yeah, go to a Blue Angels air show where they bring an F-18 across at like 60 degrees high alpha and the things are just hovering. It's amazing to watch them.
Jason's RC Reviews, welcome, and I will throw a wrench your way. Everybody, welcome Jason's RC Reviews to the show. And Randy says, hello, Amy. Amy did stop in earlier and give us a Merry Christmas message.
Yeah, I thought she was trying to flash you guys, and then I saw she was just showing you her ugly Christmas sweater.
I wasn't going to say that. I'll let you get in trouble for that.
She's not in the room right now, man. If she watches this playback, I'll get busted.
Jay Steven said hello. He just joined. Michael Rochka saying, I agree, Mike. Maybe that is Deuces Wild, who is saying, Learning to land nicely is giving it what it needs to fly and nothing more. So if we were to say, dissect that is, let's say power. Once you let off the power, you're going to lower yourself down. We've established that. But the other thing is, along with that power, part of it is going down and part of it is going forward, because that nozzle is, say, pointing in this direction. So part of it is keeping your speed, part of it is keeping your power. If you don't keep your airspeed at whatever angle of attack you're at, then you are going to stall no matter what the plane. And it depends on the type of plane as to what the stall is going to look like. It may be a stall where some planes, they're nice and gentle, and people a lot of times, first time they fly a different plane, they'll go up and test the stall, and they'll find out the nose drops. As soon as the nose drops, they get speed. They have the controlled flight, coordinated flight, so they're going with the angle of attack. They're going this way, so therefore they're flying again, and their elevator has, say, authority.
That's what I mean by feel, Judge.
Some of these planes, you get the feel of them, and you may find out, whoa, it's going to go down at this angle of attack, at this speed. You practice high, and so that way when you come in, and you want to, as Deuces was saying, maintain that angle of attack. You come in for your landing, you don't change your angle of attack. You don't change your elevator if you don't have to. You really just set that elevator, and it's your other thumb. I don't know if you guys can realize this, but this thumb is the throttle thumb.
It looks like you're about to have like a by yourself thumb war, dude.
Yeah.
Like you're the loneliest man alive. If you're
he wins every time.
I'm surrounded by people, but I'm the loneliest.
Dave, it's time for your radio.
So throttle, you're working that throttle. You know, it could be up and down very drastically. You're going to maintain a certain amount because you always want to keep some of your throttle this direction so that you're maintaining your speed. But the rest of it,
when
ahead,
watching Ryan's videos, you know, it's just the way he sets it up. So if you get the same plane he does, and you watch him come in and grease landing after landing after landing, he talks about it. He says, "Oh, it wasn't set right. It wasn't, it wasn't set up right." Who's that, Amy? Oh, Farmer. So just, and their video is so good of seeing that approach profile of that plane coming in. If you try to match or get close his center of gravity that he uses, and have your plane practice coming in, having your plane look the same approaching as his does, you can learn a lot that way too. But obviously there's no direct substitution for going out and flying a lot, but you can learn by trying to mimic how it looks in the air settling in.
For sure.
He is so good at that. It's unreal.
For sure. And he's got a lot of experience from landing the different planes, but it was funny because one time and the high alpha, whether it's landing or flight, that's what to me jets are about. That's the sexy thing from jets. And I messaged him one day, why am I not able to get this high alpha? What do I need to do? And he said, set your battery farther back. Now, obviously from his videos, he's a lot of times saying battery all the way forward. That's because when he's just straight flying, and then you can still do the flare, and get that good landing. But if it is that battery's too far in the front, you might want to just give it up because your nose is going to want to come down and your elevator is going to try and be fighting, and you're just in an awkward situation. So what he did was tell me to move the battery back and move the CG back. It's going to be able to rock along that back pivot point a little bit better. The other thing he was saying is he put in the chat here for the F-18. It's called Wing Root Glove, Leading Edge Root Extension. All right, so Wild Bill is asking Josh Air Marshal, and who are the other guys? So that would be RC Air Marshal. Let's see if I can point to him. RC Air Marshal, Dave Marshall, Michael Rochka, and Fireman, which is also known as
Rich.
Rich. So you're in what, Cincinnati or something?
I'm in Kansas City.
Kansas City? Same thing.
Nice.
Somewhere out there. And then we got Michael Rochka.
South Block C, Attica Prison.
Look at that jet.
Attica.
So now we got some more knowledge in the room. We got Ryan himself
Oh, finally. There he is.
joining the room.
Hi, Ryan.
So, I want to show you what Ryan was talking about with wing root glove, right? So this is the giant fuselage of an F-18, right? There's no wings on it right now, but if you could see where the wings were, they'd be right here, right? So typically this would be the wing root, right? This area that extends up the front,
No wings on it right
that's the wing root glove.
If you could see
Right, this area here, where you're still going to get some lift from that horizontal surface, that's the wing root glove. And, like in the classic F-18C style, it kind
I'm
of
still
looks
trying to
like
figure
that.
out ventral fins.
Well, this one doesn't have ventral fins, but
Well-
if you ask Dave's RC, that's these guys right here. But it's because he's always upside down,
So I muted
Sorry.
you for a second there, Pilot Ryan, and then I saw you got your headphones. So I unmuted you. So maybe we can say have
good.
everything. All right, so we hear you. Guniak is saying that sounds sexy.
What's that?
I don't know.
Hey,
maybe-
I just had to jump in because golly, this is, you guys been around for a minute with me, it's one of my favorite topics. And so I just got to jump in. I love it. So and this is a good example, that A10 video with the touch and goes, touch and go, touch and go, touch and go. What you can hear when you listen to the throttle is one landing. It'll be listen to the motors.
Listen to the motors.
It'll be a steady, perfect, all the way. The motor settings, I was able to. That was a good one for me.
You can play it here, Ryan. Just hit share right down there and put that video on.
Nah, watch it later. But let me get to the point, because
Sorry.
so I'm explaining what a perfect one is, where I have a throttle setting, elevator, everything worked in concert in marriage,
CG.
perfect to grease it in. But all of those touch and goes and landings look the same, but they don't all sound the same. And here's why. If I was sinking too quick, you're going to hear me blip the throttle and give it some,
Yep.
whatever it needs. What the answer to the question is, whatever the hell they need. It's a language. You learn how to read it because of experience, a little practice. But if you maintain a glide slope, I mean, listen, if you're trying to recover from a stall, the first thing you want to do is, if you're losing airspeed, you want to recover from a stall, is relax that elevator. So let's say you're dead stick and you don't have power because you ran your battery out. You're not going to be holding the elevator and pushing through to maintain a glide slope. You're going to have to relax the elevator a little bit to maintain that speed. And then at the end, pull flare. And flare is not so we can hit ground effect like an airliner. Flare is to level the damn slope off so you don't smash it into the ground.
Right.
Sometimes you catch ground effect, and that's really awesome. That's one of my favorite things, and it doesn't happen very often. It's neat when it does it.
How do you know when you catch ground effect?
Because the son of a bitch will float
All the way down the runway.
Yeah, you can have the stick pegged. It's just when everything comes together perfectly.
The reason I'm asking is because when I fly the Optera 2-meter wing, I didn't fly it until my brother was here to throw it for me. And honestly, I could not land the thing
him
in
get
the space
chopped up.
that I had. I literally kept in ground deflect and float. I literally told him, hey, can you catch it for me? So
Wow,
literally,
yeah.
I flew it, and he ran down with it. I pulled that, and he caught it. He pulled it out of the air.
Yeah.
I didn't get it on
Yeah,
film.
so
I'm sorry.
It's also because that's a very slippery airframe, so there's not a whole lot to slow it down. But there's one analogy I wanted to throw at you guys, and it's kind of the one thing I think about. And again, all the talk about throttle and pitch and whatever is going to, for me, always go back to the same thing. It's learn how to read what it wants by watching. But if you think about, this is why I always say steeper approaches seem to be better for me, is because it just naturally you're maintaining your speed. So if you think about the relative wind around a plane, what happens when we go too slow? We always end up bouncing them around, right? If we come, some folks like a shallow approach. For me, it doesn't work out.
Can you slow down and explain that? If you go too slow, we end up bouncing it around.
If you go too slow, you end up bouncing around because you have no relative wind to give you authority over your surfaces. Every time I go too slow on the landing, I mess them up. You saw what I wanted to say there.
Yeah.
I mess them up. So airspeed's your friend always, no matter how you got to achieve it and keep it. But I think of the relative wind, and the reason I want to maintain and set a glide slope is because it naturally gives me the speed I'm going to need to get there and have control. It's still flying. When I go shallow, you're flirting with this slow flight, and by the time you decide to get out of the throttle to come down that last little bit, you're just not in the groove. Yeah. Here's my analogy. It's what I'm getting at. So, you know the isotoner gloves, they fit like skin tight, right?
Sure.
Isotoner gloves. Dan Marino.
Yeah.
They relative wind, grooving on the plane, isotoner glove at a steeper angle, or when you have good speed.
Right.
But not too much, or you're going to skip it off and still be flying. When you go too slow, it's like wearing a mitten. That son of a bitch ain't grooving at all.
It's not
so the best way to have a nice, tight, grooving relative wind is to have that airspeed no matter how you get there. So it's whatever it needs. So back to the A10 thing, and I'll shut up. There's a million different ways I made those landings happen, even though they all look the same. Some of them I'm blipping the throttle. Some of them I might have nearly dead sticked it. Some of them were perfect, sounded just like what I'd want every time, like the same throttle the whole way. It just all worked out.
What caused the differences? Was it you?
The differences are the setup. The setup on my base leg, right?
Okay.
If I start too high, I can rely more on a dead stick, just angle, glide slope. If I started too low, I'm going to have to push it through with the throttle a little bit to whatever I set. From when I get into that final out of the base leg, which I'm bleeding off a lot of speed and stuff there too. That last turn's usually a descending turn. But whatever I establish, I know where I want to end up, even if let's say I didn't start it at the same spot. Like if I'm flying a prop plane, you guys will see me come in really high and close, but it's a prop plane. It's high wing. I'm going to slip it. I'll just kick crazy rudder, scrub off speed or whatever.
Slip is causing a lot of friction or drag in the air.
Yeah, a lot of drag on it. So I can put it where I want it. But if I don't put that drag on it, it's going to, like your Optera, just fly on down the line.
Right.
So whatever I establish at the beginning,
no rudder.
I want it to maintain. Sometimes I need more throttle to make it maintain that angle. Sometimes I need to get out of the throttle to maintain that angle because maybe I'm going too fast and I'll fly right over the place.
See, and here's the thing is that what a lot of people, why they may not want to jump into jets beforehand, and I experienced it, but I luckily was flying a $60 secondhand jet, is that you'll come in on that base leg and you may not know how to take that speed off, and you're coming from prop planes, which are just not as sleek in general, and all of a sudden you get down to your final, and you may be, say, adjusting things, and you may be, say, lower or whatever else, which you shouldn't ever land with your elevator. You shouldn't lower your plane. You should let it lower. But what I found out was like, holy smokes, this thing's still flying at full speed. I can't land. And I was literally able to take a round again.
Yep.
And then it was able to get it. And that's where it is that I want people to have that control over their speed. Then they can fly it.
That's it. And here's the, for me, the things that put that all on the map for me, that with jets. So the first time I flew a Mirage, I was landing it like I landed my Warbirds and stuff. And that sumbitch was coming in fast. You can fly a jet and actually other stuff too, slower than they will glide well. So the thing about pushing through with your throttle is something that's new to wrap your head around if you're coming from prop planes, right? So if you glide in on a dead stick of Mirage, you're still going so fast you're flying when you land it. You're gonna be skipping off or smashing it in
at almost zero angle of attack because you're
whatever.
just flying and you have that speed.
Because you didn't set it up right. You guys, I've said it a million times, the best landings start on the downwind, not the base leg and final. You're already slow, but you're at the altitude you want on the downwind are the best landings I ever make is when I'm thinking ahead like that.
You know those guys, everything that just Ronnie just said, I think he mentioned rudder, or he mentioned elevator once in all those landings.
Yep.
And about 50 times.
Well, I could on the A10. My rule is to commit to that elevator. That if you, especially because of where the buckets are in the thrust line, the minute you relax, and I've seen it happen because I tried it. I know because I did it. If you get out of let's say you don't like it landing on the A10 and you relax the elevator to punch it, what happens? Any of you guys know? You slam the nose down. So you even on a touch and go or an aborted one, man, if I got the throttle set, or I'm sorry, the elevator set and I'm coming in and I don't like it, I stay in that elevator, maybe give it some more if I'm going to punch it, because otherwise you're going to just slamming those down.
So is there a certain order for the letting off the elevator or adjusting the elevator and the throttle if you're flying a plane? Because you're saying that the A10 has you don't let off the elevator, you give it throttle and fly it. Does that also apply to other planes, that you should give it throttle first to make sure you have that throttle, or relax the elevator a little bit and then add throttle?
For me, there's generally no first. I think it really truly is probably at the same time, and also whatever it needs. But I think all these things happen at once. Like if you're doing a crosswind landing, you're not doing one thing first. You're doing all things all the time.
Right. And the thing that I think about inside my head, along with what Michael Rochka is saying, is, you got to feel it, is that just make sure you have power. But as you're adding that power, you're also able to, because you can compensate it with power, let off the elevator. But it's just make sure
that's true.
Least you.
And you'll know
the jet, though, guys.
And you're gonna know, Josh, because if you gun it to save it, let's say, and your nose comes up crazy where now you're flirting with a stall or something.
Exactly.
You just automatically know you can. At that point, you're if you see your pitch coming up after you give it the throttle, you can relax the throttle a little, not let go, but just because the whole idea is get that plane back in the isotoners, right?
That reminds me of the other question that I had for you. And this is a question that I have, and I hope it's for other pilots, and I hope they see this scenario as something that's helpful, is, as you were saying, you're maintaining that glide slope. But one thing I want to know is it sort of cheating? Because I want to have that elevator authority. So one thing I do is I relax my elevator just a little bit to make sure I have that speed. I'm comfortable, I'm good. I relax the elevator just a little bit because I know that's going to transfer into more speed, which is then going to be, I have more elevator authority to do more flaring. Now, it's not like a big thing. It's just a little, I let off just a little bit. The plane may not even move.
It's whatever it needs, Josh. It's whatever it needs. To speak to that
all
point,
of them are different.
What'd you say, Jeff?
I said all of them are different, man. And
right.
that free wing F4 Phantom, if you come up in too high nose up and you give it too much throttle, it's going to stall on you so fast because that elevator is blocking that flow of that air coming out of that.
That's true.
And it just falls to the ground. I've seen it happen, and it's not pretty. I promise.
But now that's a wicked bird. I mean, really, yes. The F4, every weird shape on it was to fix another flaw in its aerodynamic self.
Right.
I almost can't even talk about that one in a way of landings. But I think, Josh, you're right. That plane can be wicked. That's why the E-flite one's nice, because it's light on the loading,
Yes.
I think. But
Yes.
it's the tougher gear, better grass gear is always the free wing. But
Or Jeff.
But
was
Josh,
right,
that's the right. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
So you don't want to run, but as long as you're giving it what it needs, it doesn't matter how you get there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's
Right
not
on,
necessarily
exactly.
cheating.
I don't think there's a cheat at all if
Okay.
you're landing that son-of-bitch in one piece.
Right.
I tell you, I've seen one guy.
Exactly.
I saw one guy do landing after landing after landing, dead stick in the A10, and it's like, it's not how I do it.
Right.
But it worked for him. So what
Yeah.
can you say?
Yeah, and Deuces
You
in the
shouldn't
chat
be
is
giving lessons,
right.
but
Well, and again, too, it all depends on your headwind. If you've got a good headwind, you might be able to dead stick that plane a lot better. If you
Yep.
have no wind, if you don't keep some throttle up, you're going to pancake that sucker in and tear it up something. I mean, so it all has to do with your wind as well, you know?
I want to get to this one before I forget, because Josh, this is perfect to your point. So running out of elevator, it can happen, right? I bounced the crap out of the F-86 on our videos we did, and I left it in the video, and then I come back around and I did it again, high rate, more speed. Well, yeah, I wasn't down yet, I don't think.
Okay.
Oh no, I was. I bounced it and it was a landing, but on the Mirage, when I'm learning that one, and flying with your buddies is always helpful. Me and Mike together, I learned a lot from him.
Right.
When I was, and if you watch, I don't even know if they're still out, but the Mirage and the Eurofighter is my first like true Delta flights. And because of them being what they are, you can scrub off your speed faster than you may be ready for or want to. Okay. So if you listen on the Eurofighter and on the Mirage, I had basically run out of elevator and airspeed, Josh. And the only way I saved the plane from pancaking hard was I gunned that damn throttle.
Right.
And was able to get that lift to level it off and actually get an okay landing. But I had run out of elevator, but I also ran out of airspeed. So even if I had elevator, it wouldn't have made a difference. Right. I needed thrust. I needed push. I needed speed for any of it to be effective. Well, what happens when your plane is sitting on the ground right now in your room and you slam the sticks around? It doesn't move.
Right.
It doesn't move.
Servo.
It doesn't move.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I think what Ryan's saying too is something that happens in our subconscious, right? Because if you're coming in too slow, you know, your plane is going to want to drop, right? And our natural instinct is to pull back on the rudder, or to pull back on the rudder. That ain't going to do shit. But pull back on the elevator.
Back roll. Bam.
Right.
Coach?
Yeah, right. You know, our natural instinct is to pull back on the elevator to get the angle of attack to look like we want it to look. But in actuality, your airspeed is too slow. So you are holding max elevator to keep the plane, because you're not carrying enough airspeed. And then, as you get towards the end of the runway and you're still trying to manage the throttle and cut the throttle, and then, now you're coming in too steep and you end up coming in nose gear first and you bust the damn front landing gear right off the airplane. Ask me how I know. So, like that is what's going to happen. So, and that's where you're at that. And I call it that fine line between a stall and flying. At that point, if you're holding all of your up elevator to maintain what looks like a proper angle of attack, but you're not carrying enough airspeed, you're basically stalling the plane.
Right.
For sure.
Well, that's why I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather fly on a day with, say, a 8 to 10 mile an hour headwind coming straight down, because it just gives such better control of that jet for me than no wind whatsoever. That's just me personally.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the flaps, but that's like a whole nother subject, or flapper-ons. But it's like, you use your flapper-ons based on the wind. And like, say that Aptera, I tell people, when you launch it, wait for the breeze, or a lot of planes or wings, wait for that breeze and throw it. And then you can throw it, say, without the throttle. but yeah. To me, that's the thing that I worry about when I'm landing that jet is, okay, let's say I give it more elevator. Just because I have more elevator to give doesn't mean it's going to give more. You may have already maxed out all the authority you can possibly give because of that airplane configuration. And one of the things that Deuces was saying, to your point, Jeff, is that on the plane that we're talking about, I'm blanking it out, but that the elevator cancels out the thrust or the lift.
Right. Yes.
What's up, Bledsoe? And Bledsoe answered another question of mine either, and I didn't know exactly what he was saying. I think he was answering, how do you know when a plane gets into the ground effect? Because say that Optera, it'll float for a soccer field, whereas an F-18 may just float for a little bit more. But how do you say no that versus saying it's because of the flare or whatever else? And he said something about half a wingspan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, okay. Basically, ground effect is going to be half the length of the wingspan of the plane. So at least that's full scale.
Oh, you're talking about height?
Yeah, and so
Okay.
if the plane has a 6-foot wingspan, you can assume that 3 feet off the ground, you're going to be into ground effect.
Because I was confused because I'm like an Optera will float for a soccer field. How is that anywhere near the length of the wingspan?
That's combined with
height.
Once it's in ground effect, it has so much more lift that now your stall speed is much lower.
Right.
And so you may be coming in just fine, it's dropping, but then you go into ground effect and suddenly you just have all this lift, and so it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, just so you guys know,
so,
he's not talking out his microphone. He is a full scale pilot.
Nice.
Bledsoe is.
But it's one of those things you just get a feel for. I mean, every plane's different, and you may come in and you're just going to float down the whole runway and go, oh, shoot.
When it's really hot, that black geotex, it's sometimes hard to get stuff to sit down on them.
Yeah, and if you're coming in just way too fast,
the heat's coming off of it.
Yeah, the thermals.
Yeah,
Well,
so you got a bit of a thermal layer.
We have crazy stuff happen over there. We'll have a sprinkler cooling the air off over the field, and then a road where nothing's going on, and then the hot ass runway that's like fake lift, and it's crazy over there sometimes.
I agree with Ryan. If it works for you, there's nothing wrong with it. It brings the plane.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, there was a nice phrase in here by Gary. I just got here. He says, let's see if I can memorize it. Oh, here it is. Have you ever met somebody who plays piano but can't read music? I fly like that. It just feels good.
Hey, y'all know the trick to teaching piano, right? Just gotta stay one lesson ahead of the kids.
That is true.
That's what Dave Marshall, our flight coach, likes to do.
Yeah.
You need, man.
Well, it's kind of like the MiG-17, and Ryan knows this, and any of you guys that have flown it, that MiG-17 will float forever.
Oh,
and and I mean, even with a 6,000 battery in it, it floats forever, man. And it's like you've almost got to put it down. And I'm talking with air brakes, full flaps. It doesn't want to land, and you've almost got to kind of put it down to get it, to come in. But you don't want to put it on the nose, so it will float forever, man. But it's a great jet. I love that jet.
It's a wheelie. How are you doing on the wheelies, Jeff?
I mean, I'm doing better now that I've got my CG set up good with my 6,000 and everything. It's doing really nice now. But, learning that jet is it's kind of like the F-86. In the beginning, everybody wanted to put the battery in the F-86 far forward, whereas the battery needs to be put far enough back where that plane will almost sit on its rear end before you close up the hatch and set it down. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Once you get it and you touch it on the nose and it sits down on that front wheel, it's dialed in. It's perfect. That CG's great, just like the MiG. And once you get that CG right, it's a great plane to land, but it still wants to float for a long ways. And I know, Ryan, you've seen the same thing. We all know it that fly that plane. But at the end of the day, it's an awesome jet.
This is Wild is bringing up a good point of the full flaps and the air brakes on that plane. I can see that plane really needs some air brakes from what you're saying, Jeff.
Yeah.
So everybody, we're going to be heading to GB. I haven't been able to check in on his chat to see
He
if he's
says
up and
he's
running.
ready almost. He
Okay.
says he's almost ready.
Okay, now I see him almost ready. So GB, if you could put in the chat when you're actually ready, and you can even put in a link to your stream, so that way everybody can head out. And as soon as you let us know in the chat, then I'll be closing down mine very soon. But I want to thank the audience. And one of the comments from Brian Chambers is that, you know, he has not flown EDF jet yet, but he's learning and learning and learning. And that's all we can ask for, to help other pilots, to see other pilots. You know, I haven't flown that MiG yet, but I've learned so much. I've watched so much. And even from this stream, I've learned even more from Jeff saying that. I just thought I would not have known that they're working behind the scenes to actually get it down. I would have thought they're working behind the scenes to get the wheelie.
No, I mean, it's like, you know, watching Ryan's videos, man. I mean, and Deuce is wild. I mean, Ryan helped me so much with this jet because of the CG with the battery pack, but also, you know, it's like I said, F-86, everybody wanted to put the battery per the manual forward. And
I did wrong on that.
Yeah, you can't do that. It's got to be far back, just like with the MiG. And if you're flying that MiG and you put that, my battery is 1 finger width off of the white box with a 6000, and it's a perfect CG. But even still, if you got even any wind blowing that day, you have got to let that plane settle in, and you've got to let it glide down, because it's
learn
going
the
to
plane,
float.
let the plane fly.
And bleed it off.
Right.
I mean,
bleed it off.
I keep running into the same things with these things. Bleed it off.
Yes.
On my
exactly.
BAE Hawks, on my Yak 130, on the MiG 17, bleed it off. Some of them will let you set them down, and then some of them don't. Like the Avanti, it don't want to sit down either. I think you got to bleed that son bitch off. It's light as a feather. And if you don't bleed it, it's still flying.
Yep.
And Dave, you have your pilot's license too, right? So you might know too.
Yeah.
When I was getting it, they'd have you do all the short field stuff, which is basically, you know, you want to get off the ground as quickly as you can, basically, and then you hold the plane down in ground effect to get the airspeed, and then you let it up.
Yep.
But anyway, when you're doing that, it's the weirdest thing, and I'd love to see it in RC, is that your nose is into the runway. Like, it feels so wrong, and, you know, you can push it over, and it's not going to go in. And so you just have all that lift pushing up on you. And so another thing I think would be cool on RC stuff, and I think gliders have it, is to actually get some spoilers.
Yeah.
Just to disrupt that airflow and shove it down. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So with that
knowledge, it's just like with the T-45. I love that jet, but I'm telling you, for me, it comes in so much better. And I fly mine on 8S. It comes in so much better with the wing slats out, everything fully dirty. It lands like a champ. And I mean, you know, a lot of people are scared of that jet because it is heavy feeling in the air. But when you got the slats out, man, it makes a huge difference on how that jet lands. And I love it personally. I mean, that's just me.
Yeah.
But you got to land it with speed, and you've got to bleed it off, just like what Ryan was saying, and keep a little bit of alpha, set it on the mains first, and put that nose down, and she's a great jet.
The whole time you're pushing with throttle, though, to maintain.
Yes,
see,
exactly.
We got to be careful, because when we say it, it sounds like you just set it and you glide it in and yada da. But it's so dirty, you've got to push it with
your
the
ass
throttle.
will come out, man.
Yes, exactly.
and
it's not about the elevator so much as it is the throttle. Throttle is more important to me than the elevator on a landing. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Tim Toutant says brakes, half flaps, full throttle, elevator back, brakes release, and go short field. So I am going to thank everybody again for the show. I got to make sure we get to GB's show here soon. He's coming up live right after me. I also want to make another couple of other announcements. This Zoom, I have one scheduled for 10 o'clock on Friday night. And they said, you know, schedule it and we'll let you go limitless time, along with, say, as many people as we want to get in here. So Friday night, 10 o'clock. But the other thing about that is, with Dave's RC show starting his show at 9, I may have the Zoom meeting started at 10. But as soon as Dave actually wants us to say go to the Zoom meeting or he's done is when I'll release it. And then we can carry Friday night, hopefully not into Saturday morning, but we'll carry it a little bit longer for sure.
Let me ask you real quick, Josh, is
No.
this link always the same on yours or does it change?
So I'm not sure on that. I did talk to my wife about PayPal or say a Patreon account, which one would be better? Because last week's Friday night show that we did the marathon on, it's helpful to pay for the Zoom, and things change whether you pay or don't pay. If it is that you pay, I believe the rule that Randy told me was then your number can stay the same. So you guys can just put that number in, and if I'm, say, on, you guys will be in here. And that's one of the reasons why I want to open it up to you guys to be able to say, you know, sponsor that so that we can get that and make it easier for everybody else as well.
You have my dollar, Josh.
Why, thank you.
Does Patreon take something off the top like YouTube Super
Maybe
Chat?
Ryan would know.
Very minimal amount. I mean, I could almost tell you.
Not 30%.
What's
like
better,
YouTube.
Ryan? Is it PayPal or Patreon, you think?
I think PayPal.
You know
PayPal,
what?
if you do friends and family, it takes
Here's the
nothing.
deal. Patreon's awesome because when you sign up, you subscribe. It's every month.
Right.
If you want, right? You can also do it one time.
I think so, but if you're going to do one time, go PayPal. But if like I've got like 14 guys who are contributing, and that's amazing.
Well,
And I was so pissed off at work today. I'm about to put a call to action on. I'm so over it. But yeah. Anyway, I think Patreon's fine because it doesn't. It's very, very minimal, like single digit percentage compared to 30.
Oh, right.
It's fantastic. And because it's Patreon, it's like its own little private social network. You can post and comment and message your patrons there
Right.
as well.
I need to talk more shit to Dave. I'm his only patron. I just need to be putting stuff on there
Yeah,
every week.
you ain't my patron. You ain't my
Hey man,
patron.
send me. I'm into Dave for $5, dude. Like I'm
$5 a month you
spread
pay?
thin, bro. Yeah.
I got 15. I got 15 guys.
Well, we got a show with GB on. I'm going to make sure I put this
Let's
link
go.
in my chat. Let's go. Let's roll.
Let's go.
There's
All
the
right.
link.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the
GB.
show. I'm
to
excited
jump
for the
in,
Wild
y'all.
Bill to be on here.
Oh, here it is. Okay. No. Yeah.
There's the link. You guys click there. Go to his show. I'll meet you there. I want to say thank you and salute you all. Here we go. Let's get it together if we can.
All right,
I love you,
later.
Bledsoe.
All right,
See you,
bye-bye.
fellas. Have a good
See
night.
you later. Adios. Bye.
Peace.
Out, says Deuces. Let me close this stream. This was
Is
awesome.
the YouTube over, but we're still on Zoom? Is that what's up?
We can do well. The YouTube is not over. Let's see. I'm gonna close it.
I think we're
Right.
just still on Zoom, but YouTube's over, right?
We'll stay on Zoom even after YouTube is over. End.